I find that blood work is a good place to start just to make sure that the basics are covered. But it gives people such a false sense of security, clean bill of health, but you look at what was tested and it was very minimal. Or even worse, a woman feeling tired all the time, she goes to her doctor, gets blood work, and goes back 3 or 4 months later, gets more blood work. You're fine, everything's fine. And then they're like, well, something's wrong with me because I'm not feeling fine.
Welcome to Hack to Health, where we unpack practical biohacks to help you feel younger, longer. I'm Joe Steele, and today we're diving into that drained, foggy slump that kills your energy and ages you fast. Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp, a biohacking expert with 27 years in chiropractic and functional medicine, went from battling anorexia at 14 to helping thousands reclaim their vitality. We'll explore why exhaustion hits hard, think stress, hormones, or poor recovery, and unpack simple tools you can start now to recharge and thrive. Good afternoon, Dr. Nathalie. Thank you so much for your time today.
I'm happy to be here and have this conversation.
Me too. And reading about your bio and all the wonderful accomplishments you've had in your life. But I always like to start in the beginning, if it's okay to ask. You recovered from anorexia about age 14.
Yes.
Which sort of started this passion you have for health. I wanted to ask, how did that experience maybe reveal, the sneaky ways exhaustion might start, stress overload, low energy? Was that sort of the moment that you were able to sort of decide this is what I want to do with my life?
Yes, this is a kind of a long answer, but yes, I was 14, and back then, there was no Google search, or even like, I'm from a small town, library didn't exist or barely. So it's just, I was really on a quest to figure out how to heal myself, because I was very athletic and my volleyball coach benched me at the provincials because I was too weak and I didn't eat, and obviously it would have been dangerous for me to be on the court. And I think he was also trying to make a point, Natalie, you can't continue like this is not good. So I think that's what, put me on a mission to figure out how to heal myself, learning about my relationship with food and what was happening. And like I said, thankfully being athletic and not being able to do what I loved was really big incentive for me to go, okay, no, I cannot continue down that path. So I think it was not just in terms of energy at that point. Mind you, now energy, I see this because I've been in practice 30 years next year. And I see it with patients so often. This is what I deal with all the time, that chronic fatigue and people expecting it's normal to be tired because they're busy. It's normal to be tired because they're getting older and all of that. So I deal with it more in my practice. And I always talk about, energy management before time management. We've gone crazy with the time management, and I think it's important that we manage our time. But for me, it's all about managing my own energy throughout the day. And when I started looking at, my days with that, then, it really changed things around. So I'm sorry, it's a long answer to your question, but definitely, my situation got me into health, and I'm still learning. I'm always, I'm on my 6th book. I'm always researching. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always trying to do things for myself. And I love the title of your podcast, because one of my book is Hack Your Health Habits, very similar to the name of your show. So I'm constantly finding ways to hack or biohack myself so I can share it with patients through my writing, my blogs and podcasts and interviews.
Yeah, and it's fun, not funny, but I'm in that world right now with the volleyball, and, coaches talking to my daughter, our kids, and kind of don't not eat because this is a long day and you're going to go to school, you're going to play a game, and you see these kids, they just don't want to eat a full day. It's weird. They don't want to bring lunches to school. So I don't know that much has changed in that regard, but it's unfortunate because I don't really think they realize what they're doing to their bodies, especially being athletes.
Yeah, and I think it's twofold. And I remember I was studying in health science at the University of Ottawa, and I think I lived on a muffin and an apple. Like, how silly was that, right? But to go back to your daughter, I think it's the pressure of society as well, right? That, young girls have to look a certain way and so forth. So it's not an easy time. It's never an easy time to be a teenager, boys and girls, alike, for different kind of, usually issues. But it's even, I think, harder now with the social media pressure, the phones, the readily access. I remember when I left school, I went home. I mean, I played with my neighbors, my friends, but it's not like we knew what the other person was doing. We had, it was structured, and we were out of school. So I think, I don't know how old your daughter is, but it's very challenging to raise kids and to transitioning to young adults, for sure.
It's funny because nowadays it's, what are your friends? Oh, I'll just look at their geolocation on this app and I can tell they're at this house. And they don't even have to guess. It's just they know all the information's right at their fingertips, and then they're like, well, we're not going to go out. We're just going to sit in in text or something or play on our phone. So it's unfortunate that that's the society we live in. But it doesn't help too when you're trying to keep these kids active. How about for like the adults, parents? Are there signs of low energy? Obviously fatigue, but the physiological drivers of low energy, that hormone chaos or inflammation, that sort of like accelerates aging and zapping our performance. Are people are attuned to that, or how can they be? Are standard health checks able to tell you that kind of thing, or are they?
Yeah, well, as we said offline earlier, I'm in Canada, so our healthcare system is different than the States or other countries for that matter. So I find that blood work is a good place to start, just to make sure that the basics are covered. But it gives people such a false sense of security, clean bill of health, but you look at what was tested and it was very minimal. Or even worse, a woman, feeling tired all the time. She goes to her doctor, gets blood work, and goes back 3 or 4 months later, gets more blood work. You're fine, everything's fine. And then they're like, well, something's wrong with me because I'm not feeling fine, And then, unfortunately, sometimes they're just prescribed antidepressant because, oh, you must be depressed and so forth. So I think it's one of the first signs is not sleeping properly. And especially with, again, I hate to go more with the females, but it seems that our hormones really affect us more in our fees. And I always say to patients, if you don't nurture your adrenals and your fees and fees, when you're going to hit menopause, watch out, because they're going to be already working overtime with stabilizing your cortisol and blood sugar and so forth. So it's all about the prevention and the nurturing of our adrenals. So when we transition into menopause, you're not hit like so hard that you can't function. So usually the tail sign is waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, like you're ready to go, because your cortisol is peaking at the wrong time, or blood sugar is crashing because you didn't eat, enough protein, enough fat, throughout the day. So that's the first sign that I see with people. And then now, with the wearables, I mean, love them or hate them, because I personally don't like, having something constantly.
The EMFs, right?
I'm working on patients and I can see their watch just going crazy. I'm like, how do you function during the day to have, your kid texting you and all that? So I think people have become desensitized. But that said, there are some good markers that those apps or application give us in terms of our heart rate variability. And being a chiropractor, heart rate variability is something that I measure on all my patients. I have conversation about the vagus nerve. I have conversation about the parasympathetic nervous system, and that, fight and flight and rest and digest. Those are conversations that I constantly have in the office. So I find that people are more aware now. You would have said, even to this day, heart rate variability, a lot of my patients don't know what it is, but at least they're starting to pay attention that there are markers other than their basic blood work that they can look at and monitor.
Would it be fair to say that what you were describing earlier about, women waking up at 2 a.m. and paying attention to these things, would that be a sign of perimenopause?
Not necessarily, not necessarily. And oftentimes it's confused. I'll have patients that will say, oh, I think I'm like, they're 42 or something like that. Oh, I think I'm starting menopause. Not quite. Your adrenals are, working overtime, and that's what's waking you up. And because adrenal, when you wake up at night, it can almost mimic a hot flash, right? So those hormones are so intertwined for it's crazy. They all work together. So not necessarily, but it is one of the first sign that you should pay attention and make sure that you're nurturing your adrenals, because as women get older, it's not so much the ovary producing the hormones, it is the adrenal gland. So if it's already tapped out because you burnt it, and I hate to be black and white like this because it doesn't work that way. The body's always in balance, but if you worked it over time, it will definitely have a negative impact.
So when someone comes to you, and of course you did preface it that we're in different countries, how do you start with someone? Is it a lab panel that you do with them to sort of just to get a basic?
So yes and no. As a chiropractor in Canada, I do not have access to blood work. So oftentimes patients will bring the blood work to me, but I have tests as a chiropractor, like I said, the heart rate variability, the surface EMG, a thermal scan, and a full exam of their spine, because the spine covers the nervous system, which controls everything. So it's amazing as a chiropractor what impact we can have on someone's nervous system like this, right? That balancing of that sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So I always start with that, doing a full evaluation, having a conversation with the patient to see where their stress level is in their lives, and then work on that aspect. And then if people want to dig deeper, because again they have to want to dig deeper, then I'm there to support them, following up with supplementation, lifestyle changes, because as I mentioned, I'm on my 6th book, so I usually say read what's in this book. You're going to be it'll be a good start for them from a lifestyle point of view, because there's no magic pills that it is with a supplements or a medication. Like it's not one thing, it's a combination of things. It's a multitude of factor, and sleep and movement being the two most crucial one. And they're not, sleep is boring. I've done an hour presentation. I was asked to do an hour presentation on sleep, and my first thought was like, wow, do I have enough to talk about for an hour? And the answer was yes. It's just so important. So as fancy as we can talk about biohacking and this and that, the foundationals, nutrition, hydration, movement, detoxification, are still very, very, very important. And if you don't have that foundation, adding the trendy stuff or the fancy stuff, may not do that much, because you don't have your pillars established.
And when people don't have their pillars, right? Like say a woman, you mentioned mother, she's working all day, the sleep is just not happening for her because young children, whatever it might be. How do you start with someone there? How do you get them to get the rest that they don't feel they have the time for?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. And I don't have the answer, because I think it is very dependent on the person's situation. I'll give you an example. A female who started with me, she's got a 2-year-old. They have no family whatsoever here. So it's her and her husband, and he's working and she's at home and so forth. So she's just even finding it hard to come for her appointment. That said, if I told her to change things in her life, it's very hard for her to do so, just because of the logistics. So all that to say, I think it's awareness. It's being aware that maybe you don't have to say, yes for your kids to go to the 7th soccer practice. It's saying no to, I don't know, something that is just too much for your on your to-do list. So, I like to see families active, but I always say to parents, if you don't do the exercise and take care of you, what are you teaching your kids? It's okay for mom and dad to run, to practice and do all that, but you haven't done anything all week. So kids look at us, they see what we do, they learn from what we do. So I have parents that say, okay, I'm dropping my kids at soccer and I'm running the track or walking the track while he's playing soccer. Awesome. So it's about integrating those things into your life And with your family, same thing with cooking, right? Like just get your kids involved with shopping, get grocery shopping, get your kids involved with the preparation. It's a necessity of life to eat and eat well. Teach them. Teach them, the basic, get excited about it and do it as a family. So I think it's not just one thing, it's integrating those things. And oftentimes for the woman that you just described is being able to say no, not this week, or no, not this month, or I can't right now. So it's just, again, awareness to say, okay, I have too much right now. And all of us, I'm sure you too, like we keep adding to our to-do, and at some point you're like, and then you sit back and say, okay, what's on my not to-do list? And then you start, checking off certain things. And I think we all have to do that inventory of the not to-do list every 3 months or so, because things pile up, ramped up. Oh, you have time for this, you have time for that. So again, I'm talking about time management right now, but it all goes back to energy management, that you want to have the energy to be able to do what needs to get done in your day, that it is with your work, your family, your workouts, and so forth. So paying attention to that, I think, is crucial.
And is the low energy, for people listening, they might think, is this even preventable? Am I able to reverse this? Is there, like you said, there's no magic pill for one that's going to apply to everyone, but can it be sort of reversed or slowed down?
Yeah, well, unless it's something, and you probably know that from your background, but the mitochondria is the energy center of the cell. And if we have cellular inflammation, what happens is that the communication, because our cells are this lipid membrane, if you want, that needs to be nice and flexible for nutrients to get in, toxins to get out, hormones to get in, and be processed. So to answer your question, yes, and we have to look at the mitochondria, and we have to make sure that we don't have inflammation in the body. And inflammation, I think now, I would have said that word 5-10 years ago, nobody really knew what it was, but now chronic inflammation is your diabetes, it's your heart disease, it's your cancer. They're all lifestyle diseases caused by inflammation, Alzheimer, dementia, the list goes on. I always say now, the name of the game health-wise is to keep inflammation at bay and make sure that our cells are not inflamed, so that communication in and out, the detoxification, the hormones, the nutrition, the nutrient absorption can happen properly. I do believe that with change in lifestyle to decrease inflammation, a good detoxification, process, and I'm not talking about heavy metal detoxification, sometimes we need it, but I'm talking about sweating, I'm talking about sauna, I'm talking about drinking enough fluid, getting your lymphatic system moving, I'm talking about optimizing your nervous system, as I mentioned earlier. So I really think it can be improved a lot, unless someone's got a rare disease at the cellular level, or has a level of toxicity that's gone so beyond that they need a functional medicine practitioner to get them out of the situation that they might be in.
And down here in America, I'm not sure up in where you are, but chiropractors sort of have become the go-to for a lot of wellness over primary care. It's, restoring vitality, right? Longevity. How does your approach to, tie spinal health to energy for someone that doesn't understand, like, okay, she's a chiropractor, well established, but how does that all relate?
It's funny that you asked that, because one of my book, and it's mostly for my patients, called Fired Up and Feeling Great. So that fired up to me is the energy. So to me, at the basis, if someone's nervous system is not firing on all cylinder from an energy point of view, like, you're not gonna have the energy that you need to. So in my rooms, I have this huge nervous system chart with the parasympathetic, the sympathetic nervous system, and that fight or flight. And I'm always talking about that, balance and so forth. So I tie it in all the time with the nervous system. So it's just a conversation that I have with them all the time. And then every time, or through my blogs or the books and so forth, like we talk about lifestyle. What are you doing in your life that maybe is creating inflammation inflammation, so that cellular communication cannot happen the way that it should, and it transforms, the consequence is a lack of energy. And like I said, so many people, I feel sad when I see people going, like, just being tired from the time they get up to at night, because I get up, I'm good to go, and I'm good to go, until it's time to go to bed. And it's because I paid a lot of attention to that energy management that I was talking about. When I was in my 40s, I did, and I still to this day take rhodiola, ashwagandha. Those are herbs that help nurture my adrenals. So I really paid attention to that energy and not pushing myself too, because I know oftentimes I was part of CrossFit for 3 years, loved it. It was good, but then my mom got sick and I was at CrossFit at 5:30 in the morning and not sleeping. And I'm like, okay, whoa, I'm going to burn myself out. So I was, I guess, more aware because I'm a health practitioner of it, but there's no really benefit of a woman that's, so fatigued, pushing herself to the extreme. So it's having that awareness that you have to not push too much and make sure that you're not overdoing it, because it's going to be detrimental to your health. Easier said than done. We've all been to a point in our lives where, maybe we competed for something that we push harder, or a stressful situation in our life that we needed to deal with. But you can't be in that chronic fight or flight mode. The body just can't do it for that length of time.
Yeah, because I'll talk to a lot of people and I'll suggest, okay, check out a chiropractor. Go, and they say, well, my doctor, their MD or what have you. So you don't need that. Why do you need that? Almost like dismissive, if that's a word to say it. How do you feel in that regard? Like, is there a pushback amongst peers in your circles that not sort of staying in your lane, or is it that the MDs, and again, not calling out any industry specifically, but that they should be paying attention to this lane that you're sort of an expert in?
Very good question. So what's happening here anyway in Canada is our medical system is just so tapped out. A lot of people do not even have medical doctors. So they have to go to emergency, wait 18 hours to maybe get an ultrasound if they have gallbladder issues and so forth. So it's not nice. So I think the poor MDs are just overwhelmed with just doing crisis care. They do not have the bandwidth to address too much lifestyle. So I'm finding myself, again, seeing a trend of 30 years that, yes, at the beginning, I think people were just coming in for back pain, neck pain, and so forth. But I was always the one educating them. Oh, did you realize your back pain is causing your constipation because your nerves of your low back go to your gut? Oh, no, I didn't. Pain between the shoulder blade, did you realize that it goes to your stomach and it has a potential effect on your digestion? Oh no, I did not know that. So from the get-go, I always went back to the nervous system. But you're right that, now more and more people, they come to me, they don't have a doctor. So it's like, okay, let's sit back, let's do a good health history. What's going on? Let's look at it from a neuromusculoskeletal point of view. And then, okay, what can we do lifestyle-wise to help you? And sometimes we work with naturopathic doctors that can order blood work. So there's other options that we can work a few holistic practitioners together to kind of support that patients because they don't have necessarily the supports. Did I get throughout the years from medical doctors, stay in your lane, even just from a chiropractic point of view? Yes, definitely. But, medication is not in our scope of practice, so never will I tell someone to get off medication. What I'll do is give them tools to support their lifestyle so that eventually, with the help of their doctor, they could get off the medication. Because who wants to be on, opioid for the rest of their lives? I think people are aware of what it does, or antidepressant, or GERD medication and so forth. So I'm all about supporting the human in front of me and the patient in front of me. And I think the patients feel it, like there's like, wow, they're really looking at me and giving me practical tools and not being mad at the medical world. They're just so overwhelmed with crisis care that it's not even funny. Like our healthcare system should be called disease care, not healthcare, because health is what we try to do on a daily basis. And medicine is fantastic at crisis care. It's if you break a leg, you don't go see your chiropractor. And if you have a heart attack, don't come to see me. You know what I mean? But there's just so much more that we can do from a support. And I almost don't like to use the word prevention, because I think it's a lot more than that. It's a lifestyle. It's putting all the chances on your side of doing the right thing so you stay healthy and strong and vibrant and have energy.
Yeah, down here sometimes it's referred to as like treating symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Not right. So,
Yeah.
it's what people are experiencing when they're going to their standard wellness check, every annual checkup, physical, whatever you want to call it. When it comes to nutrition, again, still no one size fits all, but do you have a basic for people that are coming in and you realize they're just fast food, ultra processed, and you kind of start them on a basic level? Where do you begin there?
I'm a big fan of not removing things, because people will feel deprived and they kind of panic. What do you mean I can't have wine anymore? So I'm more about adding good food and good nutrition so they can start feeling better. So that's usually, my approach. And then again, defaulting to women, most women do not eat enough protein. So I'll say, in pounds, if you weigh, I don't know, let's say 160 pounds, technically you should be 120. Well, let's aim for close to 120 grams of protein per pound. And people look at me, and as soon as they do it, they can't believe the difference in their energy. And also good fats. We talked about blood sugar stabilization. Like, you need to always have a protein and a good fat with every meal that you eat, and even a snack, because you want to make sure your blood sugar doesn't fluctuate like that. And obviously the HbA1c is a good marker to see that, the 3-month marker of glycation, and see if a person is heading to be pre-diabetic. So at least in our healthcare system here, it's being done, but it's only been done, it's once a year, every 2 years. So if someone changes their lifestyle, they want to be checked again in 4 or 5 months so they can see the results and the changes. And that's the one big flaw here that we have. It's like, you're being tested, you've got this problem, go figure it out yourself, and I'll see you in a year, if not 2. Like, what kind of, people need to be guided. They need to measure the progress, as simple as a omega 3 to 6 index to measure your omega ratio to see the inflammation. It's not an expensive test to do, and it gives so much information. HbA1c, vitamin D levels, so all those tests are good, but you have to be on top of it and redo them on a regular basis. Vitamin D, you can't just do that once a year, right? And especially if the person is depleted, how are you going to know the person is taking enough to replenish their supply of vitamin D, right?
Yeah, and when, especially depending on where you live, I'm in California. It's always sunny. Someone else might be
not here,
not where you live, right? It's a whole different world. So, so you start there with nutrition. So it's addition, not subtraction, so to speak. How about an emphasis that you might or may not put on genetics when people are told, well, hey, your grandmother was diabetic.
I'm a big fan of the SNPs, so the SNP analysis, like the single nucleotide polymorphism. When people start dialing in deeper, but at the start, unless you want to test the MTHFR, the COMT, like the major ones that might change your supplementation a little bit if you know about that, but it's not the primary thing that we should look at, honestly. Like, it's just so much more to dial in with their sleep and their exercise and strength training and blood sugar regulation and all of that. So to me, that's when you start digging deeper in someone's health, that you bringing those factors, because it can also be very overwhelming. I've done it to myself, that I would do a gut microbiome test, a SNP analysis. Well, the SNPs don't really change, but and then I'm bringing all of this data, and I'm like, okay, now I don't know what to eat, because they're telling me to eat this, and this is telling me not to eat that, and so forth. So, keeping it simple is always kind of a good guideline to go by. And then once you get your pillar, your basic, then you can start digging into a microbiome test and neurotransmitter test, a Dutch test for your hormones. But if somebody's lifestyle is really, really, really not good. It's not the place to go unless someone is really analytical and they need to have a test to start because they need that to see where they are and where they want to go. Sure, again, it depends on the person because some people are a bit more analytical than others. But no, I think there's good information to come from the SNPs, especially with hormones and caffeine metabolism, detoxification, estrogen, progesterone, detoxification pathways, and so forth. Great information, but you need to look at the basics.
Yeah. The sleep, the movement, right? The food you're eating.
Yeah.
How about environment when it comes to where you live, where you know?
Yeah, and I just did a webinar a couple of weeks ago on detoxification, and I talk about our toxic load. So I don't say, okay, do this type of detox and so forth, but because it's important that we detox, but what about looking at our toxic load? So that's the air that we breathe, that's the water that we're drinking, that's the beauty products that we're putting on ourselves, that is the furniture you have in your house and so forth. So that whole presentation focuses on decreasing our toxic load, and it's getting harder and harder because of the environment. Even if you think you eat well and as organic as you can, you're still ingesting probably some fair amount of toxin depending where you live, where you grew up. EMF we talked about earlier. I talk about our toxic load, and I always say it's like a bucket, and you can have two people that maybe even live in the same house, and one is sick all the time, immune system, eczema, asthma, all of that stuff. The other one's fine. But maybe the one who's showing sign of immune system, I won't say dysfunction, but activation, her or his bucket is probably already filled, and maybe they're not, exercising, sweating, detoxifying. So I'm a big fan of looking at our toxic load and always be on the lookout to say, okay, what can I do to decrease my toxic load? And, infiltrates our life. I'll give you an example. One of my latest blog was on caffeine, and somebody asked me about the pods, I won't name the name of the company, but I love that coffee tastes awesome. It's so convenient. Bing, bang, it's done. Well, what about the aluminum on the cover? What about the plastic? And it's just like, do I have to get this up? Yes, I do. So now, okay, let's switch back to French press coffee. And it's just, is it a little bit more work? It is, but I'm really paying attention to decrease my toxic load, right? So all of those things, women with nails and nail polish that maybe is more toxic than it should. Tampons for ladies if it's not organic cotton, it's all these things, and you're like, dang it, I didn't even think of that. My one of my assistants the other is like, oh Nathalie, I just the shaving razor with the little stripe of plastic or gel so it goes faster, and it's like, well, it's loaded with chemicals, and here you are cutting your skin. I'm like, oh dang, I didn't even think of it, right? So you're constantly being aware, and you can't change everything, but it's just like, next time I went to the grocery store, I'm not buying those because of that, and now I'm really trying to do the French press for our coffee, so it's just everything you can do, it all adds up, to make sure that you're decreasing your toxic load.
Yeah, because even the mold in the coffee, there's so many things that, again, incrementally, if you add these things up, and there is a lot of exposure that, again, razors, who would think? But I switched mine to a bamboo. Like, there's so many products out there that you can, and they're not that much more expensive.
No, thankfully now, again, the awareness is there, definitely, which is good, and I know sometimes people, oh my God, Nathalie, it's so overwhelming, and I know, I get it, like it's overwhelming, but just take one thing at a time, and I always say, you change one habit a month. It's not too hard to do. Well, at the end of the year, you will have changed 12 things. So think about it. If you change 12 health behavior, it really adds up, and it's going to show, with changes and results and lasting results, because habits are so key. And I mean, we're all guilty of falling into a bad habit, and you just go, what the heck am I doing here? How did that happen? The other day I was just thinking, I like to do hydrogen tablet in my water, and I hadn't done it in 2 weeks. No clue why, just stopped doing it. I'm like, what happened here, right? So it's just that awareness and just trying to do your best, because no one's perfect. And on that note, I always say to patients, like, you cannot do everything perfect every day. You cannot. You'd be there full time, just eating, cooking, and doing everything. We have lives. We need to work and all of that stuff. But if you can do something 3 times a week, if you can do something, 7 times a month, like you got to look more on a, I call in one of my book, Smart Cuts, the non-negotiable. So what are your true non-negotiable? And then what are your daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly? I don't do a detox, every day. I do a detox maybe every quarter, right? So it's not feeling overwhelmed like you need to do all the right thing today. And if you didn't do them today, you're a failure and just go to bed and, that's it, right? So I think it's not putting that pressure on us and say, okay, today I had a bad day. Somehow this happened. I didn't eat well. I didn't do this. Okay, well, tomorrow's the next day. And guess what? You can do better tomorrow. And it's not just being too hard on ourselves that we failed at something today just because of life's situation.
Do you have any value that you see in fasting? Because I know some people go super extreme and it borderlines, really bad for you. But then there's also benefits, we're told, right? What do you stand on that?
Oh, I've done all sorts of different fasting. And again, for women, it's a little bit different. And me fasting at 30, me fasting at 40, me fasting at 50, very different. So I believe that fasting is fantastic. When we really need to reset that mitochondria that we were talking about, I know that, God forbid, but if I had a cancer diagnosis, I'd definitely do some major fasting to reset my mitochondria and decrease inflammation and all of this. But, you can't fast all the time either. Like, there's, throughout history, there was feast and famine. So I really like fasting. I do quite a bit of intermittent fasting or fat fasting myself, but I don't do it every day. I listen to my body, and some morning I'm like, yep, I'm having a breakfast today because today is not a fasting day. And on that topic, a colleague of mine, Dr. Mandy Pels, has written a book called Fast Like a Girl. Awesome book. Every woman should read this, if they're investigating intermittent fasting, because she really nails it for female and the different times of the cycle as well, that, just before your period is not a good time to fast because of the progesterone level and estrogen level and so forth. So I'm a big fan of fasting. It depends on you, depends on your age, it depends if you've done it before, it depends if your blood sugar is stable or not. Like, it's just so many factors, but I use it a lot in my life because I find I have more energy when I fast. I do have more energy in my afternoon when I fast, usually, but again, not necessarily all the time.
And you also mentioned strength training. Is there a certain age people should start really paying attention to that versus high intensity HIIT workouts?
I'm a big fan of strength training. So I actually competed in natural bodybuilding when I was in my late 20s and early 30s. I always liked lifting weights. So you give me an elliptical and a bench press, you can be sure that I'll pick the bench press. But again, going back to women not eating enough protein, women not lifting enough weight. And we know that the muscular system is just such a huge endocrine system that is very important with blood sugar regulation and hormone regulation. So many women are afraid of lifting, and we don't have the testosterone level to get big like men do. But when women start embracing strength training, they see better results. They see, their body composition changing. They're burning calories more efficiently and so forth. So there's just such a big win. So to answer your question, to me, we should always lift weight. It should be part of everything. I'm a fan of HIIT training, but again, if a woman is pushing it and she's not sleeping properly and it's not the time to go hard. Like maybe for her, it's a walk in nature and a yoga class and nurturing the adrenals and some strength training, it just, again, I think there's a time and a place for different types of workout, but strength training and keeping body mass high is key. And talking about research, I was saying that to a 70-year-old patient yesterday. She's never done weight. And she's like, okay, I think it's time that I start. I said, good. And I said, just so you know, they've done research on muscle mass and bone density on women who started lifting in their 70s, and they were able to increase their muscle mass and their bone density. So it definitely is not too late. And again, on that note, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon has a book all about strength training and the power, of keeping strong, especially not just for women, but for men as well. Muscle-centric approach that she has on that, which I think is refreshing to see, actually.
Yeah, and maybe the DEXA scan for the bone density.
Yeah.
To start at 70. How about, and going the opposite, I know you said like don't get all like, people like to geek out over the technology and the wearables, but do you have certain technologies, wearables, biohacks that you like to do, whether they're expensive or not?
Yeah, well, if you were to see that side of my office, it's full of my biohacking tools because I'm a geek. I like to try things. So I do have an Oura ring. That's what I use because I don't leave it in the transmission mode all the time. So kind of nice. But again, I'm just not, it's, I guess, 5 years anniversary with Oura ring, but I'm not super happy where the company is going in terms of the monitoring. So just, food for thoughts on that. I'm a big fan of red light. So I've got red light units that it is for the full body or for any injury. I have a couple vagus nerve stimulator or devices that will work on stimulating the vagus nerve. So I'm a big fan of True Vega which is a vagus nerve stimulator, the Sensate for meditation. You put it on your chest. I've used Brain Tap on a regular basis. So I like to try different things, but the Apollo also for vibration, haptic vibration. But again, I could do all of those things, but I need to make sure that my basic stuff is, on point, because otherwise, it's not, you're not going to get as much of the benefits. But yeah, I like trying new supplements and new tools for sure.
So what can people expect? You've written a bunch of books, and what sort of prompted you to go there, and what can people learn by picking them up?
Well, good question. So I call it my encyclopedia. Hack Your Health Habit is about this thick, it's almost a Bible. I have a lot of patients that to this day will tell me that, Nathalie, when I have questions, I mean, now there's a little bit of the AI and ChatGPT for that, but they'll say, I go back to your book, because you have a section on hormone, you have a section on adrenal, you have a section on thyroid, you have a section on detoxification. So the books are all about, again, lifestyle and all the questions that I was getting and integrated either in a changing your habits point of view, right? So I call it Hack Your Health Habits because it's one thing to know, but if you're not integrating it, right? So I've come up with a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. So a level 1 would be, I found out my deodorant is toxic. Next time I'm going to go to the grocery store or the pharmacy, I'm going to buy something healthier. Pretty easy. Level 1, right? Level 2 might need a little bit more commitment. It could be, I'm going to cook more my food on Sundays to prepare and so forth. So you're not just thinking of it and it's done. And then a level 3 is something major, like losing 20 pounds or starting a new workout program that you want to decrease your body fat or whichever, right? And you're not going to treat those 3 habits the same way. So throughout the book, for each chapter, and there's 62 chapters, like I said, I did not leave any topics unturned. I make people go through the process. What are you doing right now? What should you be doing now that you've learned, or could you be doing that you've learned in the chapter? And then put them in, is it a category, a level 1, a level 2, a level 3? Because if it's a level 2 or 3, you need to really break it down and organize it so it's not overwhelming. Plus, you wouldn't start, change 10 level 2 habits, next week. That's a recipe for failing. So I'm really proud of how that book really integrates the habits. And my most recent book, Smart Cuts, Biohack Your Health Span, it's all about quick protocols, for strength training, detoxification, hydration, movement, so it's quick protocol for intermediate or beginners, intermediate, and people that are more advanced. So knowing how busy people are and knowing the quick conversation and how I can dispense advice to patients on a daily basis, they're really straight to the point. So I think I did a good job and my co-author, Dr. Paul Sly, it was a blast writing the book together, because he's a guy, and his habits are not, or his biohacks are not the same as me, because, we're obviously two different people. So it was cool to compare note of what he was doing, and, he eats more carnivore and I don't do well on carnivore, right? Like, so it just, again, proof to the point that we're all different, and as we age, as we change, our needs change as well, and we become different. What I was doing in my 30s, I'm not doing that anymore, for reasons that, again, it's all about that energy management, that vitality, and just making sure that I'm doing as much of the right things as possible.
I like that, especially the 3 levels, because sometimes you get this advice and it's like, this is a level 7, and you're like, it just gets overwhelming. But 3 is like, get it? It's easy to categorize into those.
Yeah.
And kind of move on. And then you have a podcast, you have a weekly newsletter you mentioned?
Yeah, I have a weekly newsletter, and if people go to my website, they can subscribe. Or I also have a biohacking book that if they go on there, it will pop up, or they can go to Dr. Nat Playbook. So it's my top 10 biohacks, and they're, again, just bite size. Okay, what can you do? 10 things that they can do that could really make a difference in how they would feel in terms of energy and vitality.
And you said the website to catch everything is what?
drnat.life.
Okay.
So drnat.life, and the playbook should pop up, but if it doesn't, it's drnatplaybook.com directly to download that playbook.
And do you see patients virtually as well?
No, that again,
just in Canada.
Just because of my scope of practice, I am certified with the Institute of Functional Medicine in the US, but it just gives me the knowledge, and that's why I write book. It's my way to share my expertise with my patients and a larger audience, because the scope of practice of a chiropractor in my province is a little more limited than, let's say, in California.
Of course. No, we all understand that listening. But listen, thank you so much for your time today. I'm glad we got to catch up eventually, and so much that we have in common, and just learning from you and how you break things down so simply. And I think that's my key takeaway from here is it's not as overwhelming as it needs to be. You have to get the basics down before we can start going into not crazy, but, elaborate, biohacks from there, but getting the basics down.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time. Great to talk with you and to get to know you, and for sharing that. I'll make sure all your links are in the show notes. Perfect.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and it's nice to chat with someone that is in health, but not necessarily the same thing as me, and also the opposite sex, because oftentimes I do those shows with another woman. So it's nice to be able to compare, because there's always something to be learned, that it is either for male or female. And I do have a lot of male patients. It's not like I only have female patients.
No, I totally get that. No, you have a great perspective, and it applies to everyone. And all the information you're dispelling is certainly, what any gender could use. Definitely, people pick up the books and your newsletter, which has all the up-to-date information in there. So that'll all be in the show notes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Dr. Nathalie.